So what report are we going to look at today?
Well, Jackie, I thought for the this third installment of our Big Reports in 5 Minutes series, we would look at the CrowdStrike Global Threat Report for 2024. Not as high on my list as like the Verizon Data Breach Report or the intrusions report, but this is also a really good report that comes out. The thing about CrowdStrike is they're very fixated on the threat. They're one of the few companies, or one of the best companies, I would say, at giving attribution to the different threat actors that are out there doing all the attacks. And like a lot of people shy away from actually attributing an attack to a particular threat actor or actor group. CrowdStrike takes the complete opposite approach. They think the attribution is very critical part of the whole attack chain, and they feel that if you can attribute an attack to a specific actor, it helps you put better defenses in place, helps you put helps your team get better prepared for the types of attacks that your company might have. So this report obviously is very threat driven. There's a lot of stories in here about different threat groups, whether it's a state actor like Iran or North Korea, or crime groups like coming out of Russia and different places like that. First thing I wanted to point out is that CrowdStrike keeps track of hundreds of different threat groups, and they said that in 2023 they introduced 34 new adversary groups to their portfolio of threat actors that they're following, raising the overall number to 232. So there are 232 distinct crime groups or threat groups that CrowdStrike is monitoring. This is phenomenal in terms of just the diversity of attack methodologies that defenders have to account for if you're in the scope of any of these threat groups. The next thing that I thought was interesting is they have a concept called interactive intrusion techniques. So this is kind of the opposite of malware and scripts. So a typical attack will involve some automated scanning, some placement of some malware, and then some automated scripts running to do some malicious activity on a network. What CrowdStrike is saying is the number of attacks that are using interactive intrusion techniques, which is an actual adversary sitting at a keyboard doing an attack once they've gained access or a foothold into a network, that those interactive intrusion attacks are increasing tremendously from year to year, and a 60% increase from year over year. So from 22 to 23, there has been a 60% increase in interactive intrusion techniques, which from a defender standpoint should be fairly frightening, because these are unpredictable attack methodologies. With an automated attack, your malware, your EDR, your endpoint detection can kind of ratchet up pretty quickly in how to prevent that. When you have an interactive attack, those can get pretty unpredictable, hard to defend against. And as you'll see in the graphic here, 61% of those interactive attacks are in the U.S. So for anyone in the U.S. listening to this, you have to not only now contend with malware and automated attacks, you're increasingly going to see interactive attacks. Which then kind of leads into the next thing that CrowdStrike is talking about, which is malware-free activity or malware-less attacks. And this has gone up by 75% from last year to this year. Those malware-free attacks, those are things like exploiting vulnerabilities. It's these different types of interactive attacks. But CrowdStrike is saying something that I brought up in the past couple of these reports, where we talked with the M-Trends and with the Verizon Data Breach Report, that adversaries are more and more relying on exploitation of vulnerabilities. And CrowdStrike is echoing that they see the number of exploited vulnerabilities increasing, which gets us to a point that I've been constantly talking about, which is vulnerability management, getting a scanner in place and looking across your network for vulnerabilities in your technology stack to help prevent these types of attacks. Another interesting thing, the number of cloud attacks is up by 75%. And you can see that in the graphic that, that's been going up steadily year over year from 2021, 2022, 2023. There's a significant increase in the number of attacks against cloud infrastructure. So that just really reinforces the idea again that you have to have cloud visibility into your software as a service, your infrastructure as a service. A lot of companies still don't have this visibility. We have to invest in cloud visibility so that we can better defend against these cloud attacks. The CrowdStrike report goes into a little bit more detail on the vulnerability exploitation, and they focus on unmanaged network appliances. And so you'll remember that there were some attacks against VPNs, against different types of network perimeter devices. These unmanaged network appliances typically don't have EDR deployed to them, so they're a little easier to attack because they don't have the detection capabilities that managed devices have on your network. Threat actors are going after those and exploiting vulnerabilities, so you really need to make sure that your edge, your network edge, is being properly patched and properly managed, and you're doing your vulnerability scans out to that edge point. There's a nice section in here about the 2024 elections, and it's not just about the U.S. elections. It's apparently 42% of the global population is going to be involved in elections in 2024. So that is a huge attack surface for the different adversarial groups out there, especially the state actors, going after either the election infrastructure, going after the databases that store election information, voter information, or just going after voters directly through misinformation or disinformation campaigns. So there's a nice section that talks through the different threat actors and the different methodologies for going after election integrity. And then the final thing that I want to talk about is they have some recommendations in here. They're not too impactful, but there are a couple good ones in here. One is prioritizing cloud-native application protection platforms, or what they're calling CNAPs. And that's really focusing on the point we just made about the cloud infrastructure being so heavily attacked recently. You've got to get that visibility. And then the next point that they make is that it takes an adversary an average of 62 minutes from the point that they breach your network to the point that they move laterally into another host within your environment. So that's just how quickly from that initial point of entry into your network that the adversary they're just getting highly efficient at doing that. It's up to us as defenders to start to match up against that 62 minutes, which is pretty quick. And they said that the fastest one that they saw was 2 minutes. So you imagine from the point of compromise to the point of lateral movement being 2 minutes, that's a significant burden to put on defenders. So make sure we have the proper tooling, make sure we have the proper training, and make sure that we're, practicing and, going through our fire drills, going through our tabletop exercises so that we're in a position to move quickly when our tools trigger and let us know that something's happening out there. So that is the CrowdStrike Global Threat Report 2024 in 5 minutes, give or take a few. And so I hope you enjoyed that, and definitely download the report, read it. There's some good information in here. Thank you.